Here at TWRS, we're always here to help our squad when they need a little push in the right direction. That's just who we are. We're a beautifully diverse group of goofballs dedicated to driving fake race cars as fast as possible. And we continue to push each other to the front using the power of nonsense. We have one of the strongest NASCAR programs on the service, and you can access it all for $24.99 a month. And we just released individual subscriptions for $14.99 a month for each NASCAR vehicle. We also just added a rallycross program, and our IndyCar program is taking off as well. So come join the weird side. We have speed and cookies. Cookies are not included in some locations.
I'm Ryan Newman, and since I started with Indiana Donor Network and Driven to Save Lives, I found out that some people think that they can't be an organ donor. The truth is, anyone can sign up to be an organ donor.
Anyone?
Anyone?
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure. Anyone can sign up to be an organ donor. So don't count yourself out because somebody's counting on you. Go to driventosavelives.org and sign up today.
But my heart's going to you, Ryan.
Love that shirt.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Another night of iRacing action here on the National Racing Network. My name is Chris Graham, joined in the booth, as always, by the Bizzler, Mr. Patrick Byrne. And we have, once again, coming up for you, the stars and cars of the TNT Shock Series. And, well, I'll tell you what, Bizzle, this one, I'm really looking forward to this one because we don't necessarily get to see the Shock Series run on a road course all the time. And quite frankly, the fun part of this is we're at a crazy fast road course. Watkins Glen International, it's, well, we'll call it 7 turns here. And this one should really, quite frankly, I think it'll be a pretty good show. This graphic has the inner loop in it. We're actually running the layout without the inner loop. Davy Jones set a track record here of 59 seconds, less than a minute, to get around this place in a 1992 IMSA GTP Jag. What do you think here, buddy? Decent car count. I think we might have a pretty good show.
Yeah, Watkins Glen always puts on amazing races. This is a track that's very near to me, both geographically and just in general. I absolutely love coming to this place. I've never seen a bad show here, whether it be NASCAR, sports cars, these open wheelers. Everything races good here. It's a nice wide layout, very, very fast corners, huge drafting opportunities, and especially huge passing opportunities. Not a whole ton of huge braking zones here tonight without running that chicane or the inner loop. Turn 1 can definitely get hairy for these guys.
Yeah, they're going to have to, well, iRacing is going to police turn 1 a little bit. Because there are the off tracks that are there, and that's something that in the NASCAR world, solid objects are track limits, but that's not the case here in iRacing. These drivers are really going to have to watch that because there are penalties in place if you go over the incident limit.
Yeah, I believe we're doing drive-thrus. I don't know what the incident limit is or how high it is, but there are going to be drive-thrus if you do exceed that. And then there will be parking as well. I believe Ed McCullen was able to get into the session for race control. So we will have live race control here. Penalties will be handed out for running wide in turn number 1 or excessive contact. I know there was a lot of talk in the drivers' meeting of, hey guys, no bump drafting down the backstretch. As fun as it seems, as fast as you can go doing it, it can lead to trouble, especially if this field gets draft locked 20 deep going down the backstretch and 2 of the leaders start bump drafting. You can very easily take out the entire field. I almost want to look back to Jeff Gordon's wreck. I believe that was 2011, 2010, 2011, there where he swung around in the S's and basically blocked up the entire track.
There is the distinct possibility of, quite frankly, just not good things happening out here. If they were to try and do some of the the bump drafting and those types of shenanigans. Following along with Drew Bernardi as he is out on the racetrack. And there we go. Now we got the timing tower up for you. Seeing Robert Drew checking in the comments here saying, so Watkins Glen shorter version. Fun night ahead. Yeah, I really think this is going to be a good show. 10 minutes of open qualifying ahead for these guys. Drew Bernardi will be among the first to get a lap in. You see James Watson coming around the car up the hill as well. There's a lot going on here tonight, Patrick, and that's going to be something these drivers will have to manage. It's not just a matter of I want this space, so to speak. It's more of, especially into the carousel here, you're going to have to watch where you put the car. You run a little wide, somebody's going to stick their nose in.
Yeah, it is very, very easy to see a door opening here at this super, super wide racetrack, and sometimes that door closes very, very quickly. So it's very easy to get your nose chopped off, very easy to get bounced up in the air if you manage to bounce one of your rear tires off someone's wing. So probably going to see some risky moves here tonight, but I'm excited to see what these drivers can come up with.
Yeah, we got Nick Hockaday checking in as well. Are these open lobbies or a league type? Enjoy the content. This is in iRacing League. If you send us a direct message or something like that, we can get you some information there as we get a new fastest lap. Simon Fell at a 105.076. We'll slide over here and pick up Mr. James Watson. Well, I gotta find him here first. There he is.
For Mr. Nick Hockaday, I just pumped our Discord invite link into the YouTube chat. So if you want to come race with us, you have Discord, jump in there, and we can get you into the league and ready to race next week.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we got, 2 more weeks left here in the fall season. And then I think it's a week or 2 off, and then we get into another 12-race season. Brian Labarge's quick time, 104.884. James Watson is going to be pretty darn quick here as well. He's going to slot into second quick, and he's a 10th and change. Back takes the quick exit down the get me the heck out of here line. So we'll pick up Brian Labarge coming around West Shire as Simon Fell going, how about 44 thousandths faster than Brian Labarge. Sam Carasala now up into P3. Field's going to be tight. I think it's going to stay that way, Patrick. I just don't know that it's going to be draft lock, so to speak. It's going to be more like within a couple of car lengths, and that's where these drivers are really going to have to get aggressive.
Yeah, but I'm looking, I see a quarter of a second separating your top 6. Now quarter of a second separating your top 7. So I think with the draft, that's going to pull some of those slower drivers up. And not that I want to call a guy like James Watson slow by any means, or Sam Carasala for that matter. But they're not currently at the top of the charts. But that draft is going to help them keep up with the field and give them a couple extra mile an hour going into the outer loop or going into turn 1 to make some big moves and climb their way up to the top. Just for those faster guys to be right behind them to do it again the next lap around.
Yeah, and I mean, we look at a guy like Chris Hill. He's currently sitting 7th on the speed charts. He was top of the board throughout practice, nearly a 2-hour-long practice. And he was complaining about the handling of the car the entire time as Jason Miller's now going to move to the top of the board. Brian Labarge up to a 104.580. 40 thousandths quicker than Jason Miller. These three, Labarge, Miller, and Fell, are all very much in a, I don't want to say train, but there's Brian Labarge out ahead of West Shire, and interestingly, nobody out ahead of him really here, Bissell, so he's not making any huge effect on the draft.
Yeah, and for a guy like Brian LaBarge, I think that's helping him go faster here. Having a nice, clean, open racetrack, especially having clean air, being able to tack these corners a little harder. I know for myself personally, I like having a rabbit to follow. I set my absolute fastest laps when I'm in second place chasing somebody. But a guy like Brian LaBarge, even Sam Carousala, I'm surprised by how far back he is. He's another one of those guys that absolutely dominates when he's at the front of the field, just hits all his marks and is able to run away from people.
Yeah, there's a couple of names. There's Chris Hill moving to the top of the board. 104.304, a full quarter of a second to second place. We just talked about having 8 cars within a quarter of a second. Now we have 1 within a quarter of a second. Chris Hill throwing down a monster lap.
I'm getting word from race control.
Oh, good.
That it is 16 incident points for a drive-through and 20 incident points for disqualification. Now, if you are new to the iRacing side, aren't sure what I'm talking about when I say incident points. If you go off the track, that gives you 1 incident point, or as we might refer to it as a 1X. If you crash into another car, but it's kind of light contact, just incidental wheel-to-wheel, but a little harder than just rubbing fenders, that'll give you a 2X, or if you smack the wall, that'll also give you a 2X. If you absolutely drill somebody, or you lightly make contact with another car and they end up spinning out, that'll turn into a 4X, so that'll be 4 incident points on the night. So you crash into a car 4 times, or you go off track 16 times, or any combination of which that gets you to 16, you're going to be driving through the pit lane at the pit road speed limit. If you do end up getting another 4 and getting yourself to 20, your night is done.
Well, and this is where you're just talking about Sam Carousala. He's now up to P2 and 1/100th of a second back of Chris Hill. Where that becomes important to these drivers is you get too far off corner exit, right out there at turn 6, you can pick up an incident point. Get too far off at turn 1, you can pick up an incident point. We're looking at lap times in the 105 or so range. I would imagine probably 106, 107 is going to be race pace. You're still talking in a 50-minute race, 50 times you have to go through turn 1. You get a little bit too far off, you get a little too far off, you get a little too far off. Now all of a sudden, you're talking about hitting that 16 number, and the 20 number is very much in play.
Yeah, and this is racing on the internet, where you might not make contact with another car. Occasionally it happens where you get that phantom 4X, so you do have to leave yourself room if you might get one of those. Now, on the other side, it can also benefit you. Sometimes you absolutely drill someone, and you don't get any X's for it. It doesn't happen very often, but it is computer simulation, glitches do happen. And sometimes you get lucky, neither car gets any damage anyway, or at least your car is okay. The guy you drilled into the wall might not be, but he's behind you now, so what does that matter?
Well, there is something to be said for the car that we're seeing Watson and Carousala just coming around, the AJ Camargo. He's in Brazil. So when you talk about racing on the internet, those ones and zeros, the bits and bytes have to dance all around the world. It's not just... it's not a LAN party where everybody's sitting in a room together. You're talking about data transfers going from wherever the driver is to the iRacing servers in Boston that are then heading back down to Brazil to cycle back and forth. And there's a whole lot going on here as we're down to the last 10 seconds or so in qualifying. There's a whole lot of chance that maybe it's almost like iRacing is making an educated guess about where your car is and where it's going.
Yeah, iRacing does have servers all over the world, but tonight's server is being held on the Boston server. We have a whole ton of drivers that are in the New England area, West Shire, Brian LaBarge, James Watson's up here in Ohio, but that's still close enough to New England. So most drivers are on that server, and it makes the packets not have to travel very far distance. You can think of each packet as a package on a truck. It's only got to drive to Boston and drive back to your computer. But then you got guys out there like like Nick Camargo, where that packet has to go, let's say for James Watson, from Ohio to Boston, down to Brazil, back up to Boston, and then the James Watson. There's a lot of time for that packet to get damaged or some packets to get lost, and the simulation is doing a lot of guesswork, putting Nick Camargo's car on the racetrack versus putting a guy like Brian Labarge's car. I know he's up near the Connecticut area. It's only got to travel a short little distance to Boston and back.
Yeah, there's a lot to go on here. The AJ's taking the boot. Fantastic area for camping. Actually, our cameras can't even. We don't have cameras back there in the boot. So
a couple of years ago, I did some camping back there on the boot for one of the NASCAR events. So unfortunately, no racing going on behind my tent. But it was a short little walk to the front stretch where we could watch some racing. But I tell you what, I don't think I remember anything about that weekend because the camping was so good down there on the boot. That's where the real party's at Watkins Glen.
Yes, I will say I think you and I have had a couple of adventures like that. As qualifying has come to a conclusion, we have 19 cars on the entry list here tonight, 2 of which did not set a lap time during qualifications. So we'll get ready to fire off the starting grid here in just a moment. We'll let a couple more of the cars get out onto the grid. Name we have not talked much about yet, Murray Damon. Good Lord. Murray Damon starting in the 4th position. Newer entrant to the series this year and really putting up some stout numbers. But let's get ready and show you tonight's starting grid for the TNT Shock Series here at Watkins Glen. Starting on the pole in the number 101 entry with a lap time of 1 minute 4.304 seconds, it is California's Chris Hill. Starting on the outside in the Alaska Air 000, it is Sam Karasala. Watch for those two to put on a fantastic duel over the course of the race here this evening. Row number 2 is going to have J.J. Wang in the number 61 alongside of Murray Damon in car number 60. Brian Labarge alongside of James Watson, the NASA Meatball number 8 lining up on the inside of row number 3. The Team Watson Racing setup, ZAS, Designs National Racing Network number 39 on the outside of the 3rd row. Row number 4 tonight, we'll have Jason Miller, the Miller High Life Special. Still my favorite paint scheme in the series, lining up on the inside of that 4th row, alongside of Simon Fell in the number 256. Row number 5, AJ Camargo in the Team Watson Racing Setups National Racing Network number 59. The Brazilian starting inside of New York's West Shire in the Homestead Coffee Shape for Oil Cannon Cameras number 16. Nagisa Yoshikawa lining up on the inside of row number 6 in the Team Watson Racing Setups number 26, and to his outside, the number 28 Napa Auto Parts Lumar Hooters entry belonging to Jason Paydu. Mike Long in the 21 alongside of Stephen C. Thompson in the 24 on row number 7. Drew Bernardi and Peter Donchak will occupy the 8th row here this evening. Row number 9, Justin Elliott in the 926. Williams F1 throwback. I'm going to give that one the pass as an F1 scheme because it's just so iconic. Alongside of Vic Aldrich in the number 98. And all alone on the final row will be the Arrow McLaren-ish livery belonging to New England's Colin Holt. Again, 19 cars on the entry list, 17 of them out on the racetrack. Aldrich and Holt not able to make the grid here as they're working their way up the S's and heading out towards into turn number 4 as we speak. Bizzle, this corner exit is absolutely critical for these guys because the back straightaway does not have the inner loop. It is a long drag down to the outer loop.
I want to go back to you giving that Williams scheme a pass. Out of the reputation that Formula One schemes have on American open-wheel race cars on the iRacing platform, Ayrton Senna schemes are at the top of that reputation. So out of every scheme to give a pass, I think we have to not give that one a pass. The only thing that's up there with
Ayrton Senna paint scheme.
What is it, a Mansell paint scheme?
Nigel Mansell, Riccardo Patrese.
Okay, Senna did run that car to the latter part of his career, though. It's still associated with Senna. It's almost as bad as running a Red Bull scheme.
No, I disagree with that. Even Ed McCullen checking into the Discord, race director saying at least it's not a Red Bull. I agree. So, out of the outer loop, the horseshoe, whatever you want to call it, field makes their way down into turn number 6. This is a decent passing opportunity. Cars are going to run very wide here. They'll make their way into turn number 7, and again, a hugely important corner is the front straightaway here, very long into a very sharp 90-degree turn 1. Pace car making its way off. Field is under the control of Chris Hill. Green flags out. We are underway here at Watkins Glen.
Single file for the top spot, for the top 3 so far. Some big moves coming in through the field, but nothing in the top 5.
Now everybody's very well behaved through turn 1. We'll pick up the leaders as they head up the S's. Hill, Karasala, J.J. Wang starting to break away a little bit from Murray Damon. You really don't want to lose the leaders here early. In fact, James Watson really getting up underneath the back end of Murray Damon.
Yeah, these guys were told no bump drafting, but that doesn't mean that's going to stop them. These guys are going to be all up in each other's gearboxes the whole way down that back straightaway.
Interesting line. Chris Hill way out to the outside of the outer loop. He's going to try the crossover on Karasala. That bundled everybody right back up. The whole field bunched together within just a couple of seconds.
I absolutely love this track in the lower powered open wheel cars. In an Indy car and a Formula 1 car, it's very easy to hit 200 miles an hour down these straightaways, huge hard braking zones. In these things, it's absolute momentum. It's almost like driving a Miata around a bigger road course where you have to keep your foot on the throttle for as long as possible, just let it coast through the corners, and you're not really slamming the brakes to the floor like you would in a higher powered open wheel car. These things are beautiful at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, now your top 2 breaking away ever so slightly here. We'll slide back, pick up Murray Damon running 3rd. J.J. Wang, James Watson right there with him. Damon starting to catch up. Karasala going to make a bid for the lead down inside. Hill able to tuck back in line, slams the door closed on Damon. I really think we're going to see kind of this for the next, what do you think, Patrick? Probably 20-ish minutes, because the fuel limit is definitely going to come into play here as well.
Yeah, I almost wonder if we're going to get a plate racing scenario when it comes time for pitting. When that pit window opens, are we going to see people come and pit as a pack? Or are we going to see people try and undercut each other, get some clean air, and get by themselves? After watching qualifying, you can definitely have pace on your own, so I'm not sure if short pitting is that terrible of an idea. Get yourself away from all the other cars and just burn laps.
Seeing Nagisa Yoshikawa and Brian Labarge maybe had a little bit of RG-bargy down into turn number 1 that last time. As Chris Hill and Sam Karasala continued their fight for the lead. Big move by J.J. Wang trying to get around Murray Damon. He may bring James Watson with him. Nagisa Yoshikawa way up to the outside. He's your hard charger right now, up 5 after starting in the 11th position. Nagisa running 6 and all over the back end of Murray Damon. Interesting that we're seeing Brian Labarge not really able to take advantage of anything draft-wise. That was all hold the gas a little longer into turn 1, and there's the Yoshikawa with the crossover. We talked about the leaders battling and bunching everybody up, but it can be really dangerous here if you're Yoshikawa and Labarge. You can lose the draft to the guys in front of you just as quick as you pick it up.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on with Brian Labarge. One of our fastest cars in qualifying, always has pace here on these road courses. Wonder if he's just saving his equipment, trying to save some fuel, maybe going for an overcut strategy, and just trying to wait everyone out when they come to pit. Possibly some carnage when these guys come to pit, as the pit entrance is on the apex of turn number 7.
Yeah, you basically have to commit to pitting before you enter the final corner, and you have to be on the brakes. Just past the apex? if you're going to make it down to pit road speed limit.
Yeah, right where you get on the gas and the car starts to push wide, you grab some more brake, pull the car down low into the pits right when everyone else is getting on the throttle. And if you don't call out that you're pitting, you don't make any indication that you're pitting, it's very easy to get a nose cone of the car behind you stuck in your rear gearbox.
Yeah, we can't have any premature attenuations tonight, and that is definitely a possibility. I'm trying to get on the pit lane here at Watkins Glen. Already 5 minutes into this race. Chris Hill leading over Sam Carasala, but now the leaders back to running side by side, and Carasala gets the move done into the outer loop. JJ Wang running a little bit wide. We'll see if that opens the door for James Watson. Trouble for Brian Lamarge. He swings way wide out of the outer loop and gives up a handful of positions. Take a look at it here on the NRN replay. Actually, that was a lap prior, so we'll go back to the live look here. But Brian Lamarge picking up an incident, having the off track as well. So you have an off track, you have an incident. We talked about that 16 number. That can happen really, really fast, and it kind of sneaks up on you because in the heat of the moment, you're not necessarily checking that all the time, but that's something these drivers are going to have to put at least a little bit of thought into.
Big off there for Simon Fell now. Out of the outer loop. All of these drivers possibly racking up all these 1Xs. I'm not sure if those are 1X zones or not. But definitely possibility of a slowdown, especially since we have live race control. It's going to be her discretion whether or not to penalize these drivers for these off tracks.
That's a great point. There's not necessarily an iRacing slowdown penalty that'll be attached to it.
Getting words from race control, I can tell when the field goes to turn 1 because I get a slew of 1Xs on my console. So iRacing is giving out 1Xs for cars running wide out there in turn number 1. And like we said in the pre-race, if you're not going to crash any other cars tonight, you get 16 1Xs before you get a drive-through. Any more than that, you get a drive-through. You get to 20, your night is over. You're parked, you're disqualified, you get the black flag, you get out of your car, you watch from the stands.
That's how it would happen in the real world. In the iRacing version of that, you just disappear. When you get the DQ, your car is just poof, gone. So we could be watching a great battle for the lead between Chris Hill and Sam Carasala. All of a sudden, one of them hits 20, and they're just gone. At 16X, you'll get the black flag. We'll see them come down pit lane. But as these drivers start to push and try to make that time back up, now that's when you're going to see the cars just start to disappear towards the end of this race. To your point, Bizzle, talking strategy a minute or so ago, I wonder, are you going to see these drivers take tires? Because in theory, the number is there. You can take tires in the amount of time it takes to fill the car with fuel. As Chris Hill and JJ White both go way off track at the exit of turn 5. Can you take tires? Yes, you can, basically without penalty. Are you going to want to take tires? Because these things seem to get better as they go, and the iRacing official races are about 45 minutes long. The drivers always talk about the fact that the tires get better the longer they run them.
They do get better and better and better until they hit the cliff. They get to a point where they're 95% as fast as they're going to go, 96, 97, 98, and they feel amazing. And then you hit 100, you set the best lap of the race, and very quickly they go to 0, or very near 0. There's no grip. It's like driving on a bunch of ice cubes. And you have no control, you're slow, you're basically dancing around the corners, begging to get to the pit lane without wrecking the car, to put a new set of shoes on the car. So I don't know that I wouldn't pit. I'd take the safe bet. I would pit, but I am not a race-winning driver here in the Shock Series. Except for a couple exhibition races, I'm normally a top 5, top 10 guy just out there getting points, so I'm going to take the safe bet. Some of these guys, like JJ Wang, James Watson, Chris Hill, even Sam Carasala, I can see this whole top 4 group staying at, or not taking tires, just taking a splash of fuel and going.
Yeah, because I don't know that they can make the halfway point on the tank of fuel that they have. So we're right at 10 minutes into this race. You start to wonder, looking a little bit farther back, Brian Labarge, the AJ Camargo, Simon Fell, Wes Shire, Mike Long. This group of cars is 8th through 12th, and they're about 6 seconds back of the race leaders, running about 3/4 of a second a lap slower over the 10-lap average. Could they be doing a bunch of fuel saving here and trying to make this a one-stop race instead of potentially a two-stopper?
Well, actually, a thought I just had is if these drivers do make this a two-stop race, you probably want to take tires on one of them. Are you going to take the tires early, take the penalty if now you're back on slow, cold rubber for the next 15, 20 minutes, and having great tires at the end of this race? Or are you going to push the tires all the way to the limit, not take tires in the first stop, and then right at the end of the race, hopefully when you have a decent lead on everyone else, then you take your set of tires and you go back out there on the racing circuit?
Yeah, it's a great point, because right now, Chris Hill has opened up about 2/3 of a second over JJ Wang. James Watson another third of a second back. Hill starting to check out at the front of the field. Maybe this is a bit of a strategy call here for these guys a little bit deeper in the pack, saying, hey, I'm going to take the shot on trying to guarantee the one-stop versus a two-stop race. If you were running the inner loop, if we were running the boot, I would say negligible. But the fact that we're not running those parts of the track and it is such a quick lap, it's a long pit road here at Watkins Glen. I think it's really a smart play if you're going to try to take that fuel strategy game early.
Yeah, I know with one of the leagues I used to run in a full-length Formula One league, and all of the races were set up where it was usually a 3-stop race, but if you just save the tires just a little bit, since F1 cars don't take fuel, you can make it on 2 stops. We didn't require a compound change, so we would usually make 2 stops or possibly even 1 stop, just running hards and then hards. Because you lose about 45-50 seconds in the pit lane, and at some of these shorter tracks, because F1 or iRacing doesn't have all of the Grade 1 circuits, you're only running a 45-50 second lap. So that would be 1 full lap you would lose in the pit lane, and if you make 2 stops over 1, now you're losing 2 laps instead of just 1.
How about it? JJ Wang making up a ton of ground on Chris Hill. Makes the pass out of turn number 4. Hill going to fight back through turn 5. But now Hill had a 2/3 of a second lead. Now we've got 5 cars all battling for the top spot again. Of note, by the way, we were discussing the off-tracks, and Ed McCullen saying, iRacing is handling the off-tracks. I'm not going to penalize them for abusing them. So let the sim handle what the sim, quite frankly, is good at handling. Ed McCullen is here to handle the discretionary type penalties. Seeing car 28, Jason Paydu has officially retired from the race. The 926 of Justin Elliott also on pit lane. Now, we talked a lot about when these cars are running the ovals, about how if you run the higher line, you can save a little bit of tire. It's kind of counterintuitive to the way it works in the real world. Is that what we're seeing a little bit with some of these drivers running wide at the carousel there at turn 5?
No, the way iRacing's tires are, they are a little broken, where on this new tire model, I'm not sure if it's been updated yet on the PM18s, but they wear over distance instead of heat. So running a higher line actually wears them more lap after lap, especially on an oval, because it makes such a considerable difference because you're running a longer distance. That's why you see a lot of guys in the iRacing side running the low line at Bristol, where the top line tends to be the fastest on the new Bristol circuit. So I'm not sure what they're doing out there, unless it's just to get that extra little bit of momentum. These aren't the high horsepower Indy cars or Formula One cars or Japanese Super Formula cars that a lot of these guys are used to running. These are basically Miatas with open wheel bodies on them. They run the Ford Focus motor in these, the little 1.8 or 2.0 Ford motor. So there's not a lot of oomph on the gas pedal, so taking that wider line gives you a little extra speed down that straightaway and run the turn 6.
Yeah, it's not quite as heavy, a momentum-heavy car as the USF 2000 is, but you do need to keep that momentum up, because in addition to having not as much power, there is significantly more downforce than you get out of the USF car, and that's something that at a track as fast as Watkins Glen is, you're trying to strip off as much as you can while not giving up anything in the corners. It's just we don't have any corners that are air quotes slow enough to really necessitate high levels of downforce.
Yeah, these guys, I'd be impressed if any of these guys were running any wing combination other than A1, which, if you're not familiar with these cars, A1 is the lowest downforce trim you can put on these things. It is running that back wing completely flat and running the front wing just about completely flat. So they're not really doing all that much other than keeping the car stable, preventing the back end from stepping out or the front end from sliding around too much.
Saw J.J. Wang slide a little bit wide out of turn number 7. Chris Hill not electing to make the move. So we're down to 33 and a half minutes remaining in this one. Simon Fell setting a new fastest lap of the race, taking that crown away from Mike Long. Simon's lap time, a 1:04.205. That's qualifying type laps. But there's really not all that much of a difference here, Patrick, because I would think you're not taking all that much fuel out of the car for qualifying with a 10-minute open session. We probably saw about max speed possibly coming here in the race as opposed to qualifying.
I think you'd be taking a little bit of fuel out of the car for qualifying. You definitely want to keep enough in there where you can get 3-4 good laps in there. You saw a lot of these drivers setting their best laps 4 or 5 laps in towards the later part of the session. But I don't think you're going to start with a full 21 or so minutes of fuel in the tank for qualifying. You definitely want to shave off those extra pounds.
Seeing Wes Shire is on pit lane.
Yeah. A meatball for car 16, Wes Shire.
Let's take a look and see what happened. Shire down through turn 1, back end, steps out, and oh baby, puts the nose in. Oh, and junks the left front as well. Shire has to take the toe back. That is a huge toe. Basically, the way iRacing calculates the toe is wherever you are on the racetrack, you have to go all the way around. About the worst spot you can wreck is right after the start-finish line, because they have to tow you all the way around the racetrack. Here at Watkins Glen, that could be a 6 or 7 minute tow before the crew would even get to working on it. I would imagine we will see Wes Shire likely retiring from this race.
I've run endurance races at the Nürburgring where we have wrecked and lost the car right there in that first section, or even lost it up in flood plots, which is not the immediate first section of track, but it's what a lot of people would consider the second section of track. Still about 10 miles to go to pit lane. And when that happens and you have to take the tow, that is get up out of your chair, maybe make some lunch, and come back, because that is a 25 to 35 minute tow. It is not fun at all, so I definitely feel your pain there, Wes.
Yeah, you have time to actually go to the store and buy the ingredients for lunch, let alone get up and make the sandwich yourself. Top 4 is right about the best battle on the track right now. Brian Labarge, the AJ Camargo, also doing some fighting back here with Simon Feld. That's going to be 7th, 8th, and 9th. That's about the only other battle next to the leaders here. Your top 5, all nose to tail, only separated by about 1 second. And the first of our leaders coming down pit lane is going to be Chris Hill. 30 minutes remaining. We're 20 minutes into this race, and Chris Hill is on pit lane along with Murray Damon and Brian LaBarge, Mike Long, Stephen C. Thompson. Is this a strategy call? We're not to the halfway point yet. The question is, can they make it the rest of the way?
I don't think he's going to be able to make it the rest of the way. I think he's thinking of this as a 2-stop race. You see Brian LaBarge coming in the pits. You see Matt Damon coming in the pits. Not Matt Damon.
Matt Damon.
I just had it in my head. I just found, I was going through my CD and DVD and video game collection, trying to reorganize myself. I found my copy of Team America World Police, so I might have to watch some Matt Damon here tonight.
Oh, and Watson makes contact! He's off into the gravel! Caution is out. Yellow flag on the speedway. 29 minutes remaining. Oh, baby. This changes everything. Caution flag is out. The Sam Carasalo with damage. So does JJ Wang.
This shakes up the whole field. Now, Chris Hill is the guy in the top spot. He is out of the pits. He's already got his pit stop done, so he's not going to need to pit now. He's the effective leader of the race. Everyone is either in the pits grabbing fuel or whatever, or getting damage fixed.
Yoshikawa's crabbing down pit lane. These could be extended damage repairs for most of your leaders. The car that was kind of the trigger for this whole thing, I think, was the AJ Camargo outside of turn number 6. Let's pick it up here. Take a look at the replay. James Watson coming up on the AJ Camargo. Or no, I'm sorry, excuse me. That's the 86 of Drew Bernardi that the contact was with. Watson goes off the racetrack. But now, there's the rest of the incident. Yoshikawa was involved. Karasala involved.
Nick Camargo was just so far behind the incident that he was able to avoid it. I want to see a replay from Drew Bernardi because clearly something happened after Watson made contact with him that took out the next 4 cars behind him.
Yeah, let's take a look here and see. Make sure I got them squared up. Here we go. So we're focused on the 86 of Drew Bernardi.
And you saw in the back of the shot,
the rest of the leaders all piled in.
So Simon Fell is coming up. He is way behind. And it looked like Nagisa Yoshikawa tries to re-enter the racing circuit and just unfortunately gets into the front of Simon Fell.
So let's recap where we are here. JJ Wang, Nagisa Yoshikawa, and Wes Shire all on pit lane. James Watson, Drew Bernardi have both retired. At least that's what my timing and scoring window is saying. The AJ Camargo will come down pit lane and take his service. That will promote Chris Hill back to the lead of this race. As the lights are out on the iRacing safety car. Basically, everybody behind Chris Hill that was a leader of this race is now, for all intents and purposes, out of this race. That has big championship implications, and it may have just decided the race winner here, as we're about a minute away from halfway.
Yeah, I mean, this completely shook the whole race up, and Chris Hill, that short pitting it, he is going to be patting himself on the back for that one. One of our fastest cars in the field, basically the only cars that could catch Chris Hill, have all just wrecked. Not to take anything away from Jason Miller or Steven Thompson or anyone there behind him, but nobody's been able to touch Chris Hill here tonight.
Yeah, it was basically that kind of group of JJ Wang and Nagisa, James, and Chris. Also, and Sam Karasala as well was up there. Outside of Sam, there's really nobody else on the racetrack that has been really up to Chris Hill's pace tonight. But on the flip side of that coin, Chris Hill is now locked into a strategy call. Jason Miller also stopped. He stopped a lap earlier than Hill did. But Murray Damon, Brian Labarge, they're all on the same strategy that Chris Hill was on. That's really going to be interesting to see how this plays out. So Chris Hill has led 9 laps tonight. He will bring the field back to green. We are underway once again here at Watkins Glen. Only 11 cars remain on the racetrack, 10 of those on the lead lap. Hill starts to break away quickly here from Jason Miller. Miller breaking away from Murray Damon. Brian Labarge thought he might have been out of this thing, falling way towards the back of the pack early in this race. Now he's all of a sudden back up inside the top 5. Info coming from Race Control. The lap 20 crash will be reviewed post-race. We will see if any penalties come from that. Chris Hill absolutely all over the racetrack. And, well, he may have gotten a piece of the wall. Exiting turn number 7, he went full Luke Bryan, kicking the dust up. We'll see if there's any damage to the race car, but Jason Miller going to be right there. Hill again runs wide in turn 1. Top 5 have broken away from 6th place, Mike Long. Of note, Sam Karasala is back in that group that's running about 1.5 seconds behind the race leader. As Miller going to have the look inside into 5, but Hill slams the door closed. You could see it took all the air off the front wing of Miller's car. He runs wide, Hill runs wide, carrying too much speed. Miller ran wide, he just had no air pushing the front end of that car down.
Jason Miller doing his best to keep up there with Chris Hill. That draft definitely helping him a little bit. I'm not sure if Jason Miller is going to be able to get by Chris Hill, but definitely going to keep the fight up with him. Especially if Murray Damon, Brian Labarge now in the top 5. He might be able to crack these 3 cars in front of him and get himself to this top spot as well.
Seeing that cars 26, 39, and 86 have officially retired from the race. That's Nagisa Yoshikawa, James Watson, and Drew Bernardi. Top 5 still all nose to tail within 1 second. The gap is now up over 2 seconds. Back to 6th place, Sam Karasala. So just past the halfway point, 21 minutes remaining here at Watkins Glen International. The big one happening about 10 laps or so ago, taking out most of your lead contenders, including JJ Wang, Nagisa Yoshikawa, James Watson. after contact with the lap car of Drew Bernardi. As it stands right now, those cars run 13th through 15th. Is Murray Damon going to have to look on Jason Miller? He'll get that pass completed. Oh, baby, Miller going to fight back on the outside, though. Damon able to slam the door closed. Of note, Wes Shire is still on pit lane getting repairs done to that race car. If he's able to get back on the racetrack, it's only 3-lap difference to 12th place J.J. Wang, so Shire could go from 16th to potentially as high as 12th. At least that's where it looks like everybody is sitting, as we're down to 20 minutes remaining in this one. The big question becomes, do the leaders have to pit again? They only made it 18 laps. Sam Carasala was one of the drivers that ran longest. He made it 19 green flag laps. Longest run belonged to Nieje Camargo. As Damon gonna have the look on Hill into 5. Man, Hill carries so much speed through the corner there. I like what Brian LaBarge is doing. Back it off ever so slightly. I don't need to be involved in the middle of all of this. Oh, seeing an incident. Lap 26, meatballs to the 21 of Mike Long and the 000 of Sam Carasala. Take a look at it here on the NRN replay as Chris Hill starts to check out. Carasala, a little bit of contact. Oh, big contact for both. Carasala will be done for the night. Looks like big trouble there for Mike Long as well. Sam Carasala out of this race. Getting word from race control, that incident on lap 26 between Carasala and Mike Long will be reviewed post-race. Those drivers sitting in the 10th and 11th positions as we speak. So we are down to, it looks like 9 cars remaining on the racetrack. 8 on the lead lap. Justin Elliott running about a minute and a half behind. He is 1 lap down to the race leader. Chris Hill's opened up a half-second advantage over Jason Miller. Murray Damon, Brian LaBarge battling for 3rd. Oh man, Hill and Miller both go way wide at turn number 5. And Bizzle, are you back with us here? I know you were unavoidably detained for a moment.
Yes, I am back now. I took your advice of opening the windows in my apartment. It got a little warm in here. I left the heat on all day like a moron. And I decided to open the windows, forgetting it's Ohio, and it gets to like mid-40s during the weeks here in October. So I had no heat running, had all of the windows open, and I just started shivering. I went and looked at my thermostat, and it's like 46 degrees in here. So got all the windows shut, got the heat back running, and we're nice and comfortable now.
Well, interesting what we're seeing here on the racetrack. Chris Hill, Jason Miller separated by a quarter of a second. LaBarge, Damon, and Thompson now running 3rd, 4th, and 5th. You have to start thinking, though, what are these drivers thinking about fuel strategy? If they can only go 17 or 18 laps, it's just a splash and go, I would think, at this point. But do you worry about the incident points that you have to deal with? There's a lot that these drivers still have to think about. And there's our answer. Chris Hill's on pit lane. Is this a drive-through, or is this a final pit stop with 15 minutes remaining?
The pit window is open for that final pit stop. See if he pulls into the pits or if he is just driving through the pit lane. See his pit box there? He is coming in, so it's going to be a splash of fuel. Is that car going to go up on the jacks, change tires? It does not look like it is. Off and away he goes. Fresh race fuel in that machine. Only drops back to the 8th position, so last car on the lead lap. But all of these cars in front of him, I think, are going to have to pit as well. So as long as we don't get another caution, I believe he's the effective leader.
Well, yeah, with 15 minutes remaining, these drivers still have about 14 laps to go. And Jason Miller working his 12th lap of the stint. This battle between Labarge, Damon, and Thompson, 2, 3, 4. What do you think of the... It's basically undercutting the rest of the field by Chris Hill.
Yeah, he's basically opening the door and saying, hey, this is my strategy now. I can't hide it anymore. You played your card. And it's kind of begging everyone else on to come down into the pit lane and maybe pit earlier than people anticipated. Maybe shifting up their strategy. Maybe even having them second-guess themselves.
Well, the odds of a full course yellow are highly unlikely at this point. With so few cars left on the racetrack and only 14 minutes left to go. The only thing that I can think of is, the splash could potentially be a little bit shorter if you wait longer.
I'm not sure it's going to make all that much of a difference. I mean, these cars with the limited fuel tanks, it's only 6 gallons of fuel. You're talking tenths of a second there, and the gap between all of these cars is about 4, 5, 6 tenths of a second. So putting in 5 gallons versus 6 gallons, I don't think it's going to make all that much of a difference.
How about Brian Labarge using the momentum of running wide at turn 1 to absolutely fly past Murray Damon up through the S's, opening the door ever so slightly for Steven C. Thompson. He's not able to take advantage. Chris Hill sitting 26 seconds back of the race leader right now. It's going to have to be a really short stop for anybody to come out ahead of Chris Hill. And with these drivers battling, Labarge, Damon, and Thompson, you almost have to think this really, the ball is in Jason Miller's court. Total time on pit lane for Chris Hill, 32.2 seconds. The lead is 25.8. JJ Wang back out on the racetrack. He is 13 laps behind the race leader, but of note, only 7 laps back of Sam Carasala and Mike Long, who have both retired out of this race. So JJ Wang does potentially have enough time with about 11 laps to go to make the ground up and put himself back inside the top 10. Jason Miller's lead over Brian Labarge, sitting right about 2 seconds. Chris Hill's gap still staying steady, right around 25.5 seconds. But the one thing we don't know right now is how many incident points does Chris Hill have? Does he have to play it safe? And could we see that gap open up? It's now up over right about, it's still right at that, now ticking up near 26 seconds.
Yeah, the big question for Chris Hill is, are these other guys going to pit, or have they saved enough here to make it to the end of the race? You see a guy like Steven C. Thompson currently in 4th. He hasn't broken into the top 5 all night. And here he is. I think he's been saving the entire night. He's not one of the fastest on the road course. He's one of the best oval drivers that I've ever had the pleasure of racing with. But like myself, not one of the top guys on the road courses, but he's up there in the top 4 because he saved his equipment and possibly making this a one-stop race.
Well, Steven C. Thompson up 10 from where he started back in the 14th position. Peter Donchak also up 10. Give the call to Justin Elliott in the 926 as well. Not the fastest guy here tonight by any stretch, but he's kept the car reasonably clean and out of the way of the race leaders.
As you say, kept the car reasonably clean. Message from race control. 926 in danger. 12x. 4 incident points away from getting that drive-through penalty.
Even still, even if you get the drive-through, you're inside of 10 minutes to go. I'll give you the shout-out, Justin. Now we're at 18 laps on the stint for Jason Miller. The lead is up to 2.2 seconds as LaBarge and Damon continue to battle. The question, I guess, because like you said, Bizzle, did these guys save enough? I just don't know how you could save that much fuel. I would think we're going to have to think about seeing this guy, Jason Miller, your race leader, coming to pit lane pretty quickly. Christopher Hill, about 25 seconds back. And here comes your race leader on cue. As does Brian LaBarge. He's on pit lane. Murray Damon, Steven C. Thompson stay out. So does Simon Fell. So with 8 minutes remaining, where does Chris Hill slot out? And my gut tells me it is going to be well ahead of these guys. Here he comes out of turn number 7. Miller and LaBarge just hitting their pit boxes.
And here comes Chris Hill at 150 miles an hour, zooming right past them into the braking zone of turn 1. Approaching pit exit now, and LaBarge and Miller nowhere to be seen behind him.
I wouldn't say nowhere to be seen. Jason Miller coming out about 1.1 seconds back. LaBarge another 1.7 back of Miller.
Well, see, when I made that call, I wasn't expecting him to be coming out of the pit lane.
You can see Hill already getting into break the draft mode here with 7 minutes remaining. But these are your leaders. Murray Damon, Steven C. Thompson working the 19th lap of the stint.
Simon fell into the pit lane now. It's just up to these top 2 now. Can they make it the distance?
I don't think
I'm going to
there's
start
any way.
seeing cake here.
I mean, they're running near qualifying pace. In fact, Steven C. Thompson is running faster than he qualified. 15-lap average for Steven C. Thompson, a 5.165. He qualified at a 5.319. So nothing going in the way of fuel saving. Chris Hill sitting 21 seconds back of these two.
Getting word from race control, the 926 up to 14 incident points now.
Oh, in trouble for Jason Miller. Jason Miller with the spin out of turn number 7. Spins
So
out of
easy to do
second
there.
place.
I've done that so many times in iRacing. Actually just recently brought the series back, but in the old Proto GT series I used to run the HPD, and out of the boot and in turn 6 and turn 7, that final 2 corners, I've spun so many times there, just getting on the throttle. The car gets light, there's a big bump there, it upsets the rear end of the car, and around you go.
So we're following Chris Hill. He currently runs in the 2nd position. Here's your race leader, Stephen C. Thompson. And this race is basically being run at sunset, by the way. 4 minutes, 50 seconds remaining. Just after 8 p.m. simulation time. Here comes Chris Hill into turn number 6. Stephen C. Thompson did pick up a lap lead. But Hill will come around to retake the race lead. Question is, as Thompson gets back to the gas, where is he going to slot in? Just ahead of Mary Damon, between Brian LaBarge and Mary Damon. So Chris Hill back to the lead of the race with 4 minutes remaining and a 4.3 second advantage over Brian LaBarge in second. We talked about J.J. Wang being able to make up the ground on Carousala and Long. He has done just that. Put J.J. Wang back up inside the top 10. Stephen C. Thompson around Murray Damon. He's up into 3rd, and your hard charger of the race with right about 3 laps to go. Talking about our race leader here as we are inside of the 3 minute to go mark. Chris Hill, a professional driving instructor, very good real world racer. Some of those thought processes, especially as a driving coach, you want to get out and just set your lap, run your race, your pace. And that's really what Chris Hill did by stopping early. He was able to control what the pace needed to be to get the win here tonight.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things I've been trying to teach myself, and even in sim racing, slot car racing, or rear world racing, it's just run your own race, get there when you get there, and with practice you'll get fast enough where you can set the pace like this. But being one of the mid-pack drivers, it's very easy to see the car in front of you, and like I said in qualifying, chase that rabbit and push yourself faster than you can go. And you can set some really blistering fast laps doing that, but sometimes you have to take a step back and realize you're not that top-of-the-pack driver, and you're going to make it to the end of the race and finish a lot higher if you just leave yourself alone and run your own race. And Chris Hill obviously has mastered that, currently 5 seconds ahead of Brian LaBarge, just doing what he needs to.
Yeah, that's something that I struggle with in the sim racing world is just being able to say, I'm not a race winner in this series or in this, whether it's an official or a league, whatever. You want to just push harder, and you feel like if I push harder, I'll be faster. It's not always the case. Not quite tortoise in the hare, but maybe not that far off. Getting the car under control is so important to making sure you finish up front. And Chris Hill just doing a masterful job of that here tonight.
Yeah, I know when I was doing slot car racing and actually touring with a slot car series, as bizarre as that sounds, we run these retro stock cars, and they're different from the retro Formula 1 cars or the Can-Am cars we run in that same series, but the stock cars, it took me so long to realize I have to dial the brake back so you don't attack the corners as hard. You just let the car roll through the corners. You're almost grandma driving the thing around there, keeping the back end from stepping out, and you go so much faster. Your lap times are still exactly the same, but you're not pushing to the limit. You're not coming off the track as much. You're not crashing into other cars because a slot car lane, they're all 4.5 inches apart, and the car is 2.5 inches wide, but when the chassis is 5 inches long, it swings out and you'll smack into the sides of other cars next to you, and you'll both go flying off the track.
With 10 seconds remaining, Chris Hill will come under the white flag and see one more circuit to go here at Watkins Glen International. Hasn't put many wheels wrong all night. Last we heard, he was at 3 incident points. No danger of the penalty being invoked. Just a masterful drive from Chris Hill, and not necessarily unexpected. Maybe a little bit of a challenge with Sam Carasala, James Watson, some of those guys we would have expected to see up front, but most of this field knew it was probably going to be Chris Hill's deal here tonight. The guy is just so wicked fast on road courses. Into turn 6 for the final time. Up onto the curves once more through turn number 7. He will come under the twin checkered flags, and Chris Hill takes the win at Watkins Glen. Just off the final corner, Brian Labarge going to come home second, followed across the line by Stephen C. Thompson in third. And very quickly doing the donuts down here in turn 1 as race results go official. So as Chris Hill starts to get back out onto the racing surface, let's take a look at the finishing order of tonight's race. 44 laps in the books for the TNT Shock Series. Chris Hill taking the win by 6.4 seconds over Brian Labarge. Stephen C. Thompson rounds out your podium in third. Murray Damon and the AJ Camargo complete the top 5. 6 through 10 tonight, Simon Fell, Jason Miller, Peter Donchak, Justin Elliott. 6 laps down in the 9th position. Good run, Justin. Kept the car on the racetrack for most of it. He did pick up a black flag for crossing the incident limit, but he's going to come home in the 9th position. And J.J. Wang coming back after the big one happening on lap number 19. He will finish in the 10th position. Second page of the leaderboard has Sam Carasala and Mike Long finishing 18 laps behind the race leader. Then all those drivers involved in the big one, Nagisi Oshikawa, James Watson, and Drew Bernardi. Wes Shire finishing in the 16th position, followed home by Jason Padu. Vic Aldrich and Colin Holt were a did not start here this evening. So we'll start getting ready to talk to some of our drivers here in the interview room. And let's see. We'll start things off with our race winner, Mr. Chris Hill. And Chris, congratulations. A really dominant performance here after the incident happened on lap number 18. How does that type of accident change your perspective on the race when you know now a lot of your main contenders were wiped out?
Well, yeah, that definitely was interesting. I didn't get to see it. I just was going to go back and look at the replay here in a second and try to see what happened there. But yeah, I guess I got fortunate that I used too much fuel because I missed the chaos by pitting a lap earlier than everybody. And then, yeah, I mean, it definitely put me in good shape for later in the race. And my early pit strategy, later on to try to break away kind of seemed to work. So I don't know. It just ended up being a good night. I'm fortunate, worked out.
So you went 18 laps, you burned too much fuel. The second stop was an 11 lap stint, so that was a conscious undercut. Was that just to open the racetrack up and say, hey, I got nobody around me and I get to turn my own pace laps?
Basically, yeah. I mean, I had Jason behind me there, and he was the only one that looked like he was in draft. So I was like, okay, head to head, can I outpace him enough to get him out of draft by myself? And that was kind of the strategy. Was like, okay, just pit and see if I can't do that. And I kept having some pretty close ones there where I'm like, man, I mean, throw away a tenth. And so I wasn't certain if it was going to work out. And it was just like 1.3 coming out of the pits or something like that is what it looked like on the first lap there. And I don't know exactly what happened to him after that, but it seemed to have worked out just enough there that I if I had enough pace, I could have kept ahead and kept him out of draft, which was kind of the whole point. So yeah, pretty happy with it. Ended up being a really fun race and working out pretty well. So.
Yeah, now where you look ahead, we have a week off next week, and then we come back-to-back races, Richmond and Gateway. What are your thoughts as we head there? Because Richmond's very kind of Iowa we saw start of the season, and Gateway is like Talladega and Daytona for these cars.
Honestly, I haven't a clue because I'm like so not an oval guy that I really truly don't know how I have no clue how that's gonna work out. I hope I'm on pace. I hope I'm competitive, but yeah, I really don't have a clue. It's we'll get it out there. Hope we have a decent stat and just see if we can't battle for the win or at least stay enough ahead of James in the pack to hopefully stay up towards the front of the points, because I think we're pretty close to the lead at this point. So we'll have to see.
Well, it's going to be a fun couple of weeks to watch. That is for sure. And Chris, congratulations on the win here tonight, leading 22 laps, about half evenly of this race. Congratulations on it, and give us all those sponsor plugs and shout-outs before we let you out of here.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks to Team Watson Racing and James and the gang and all those guys. They great group of guys. Got great setups at the shop and all that. So if you're looking for stuff, hit them up. Precision Racing Instruction. That's my company there. I coach people in the real world and in the sim, and we've got some exciting stuff I'm working on here. Got a book in the making and a bunch of other courses and stuff that can't wait to get them done and launched. Excited to see how that turns out. And yeah, big thanks to the Wes and the gang putting this on. This has been a fun series. I didn't own this car before the series, and everybody's like, come on over and run. I'm like, all right, let's give it a shot. And I'm definitely happy that I did, because I'm having a blast with it, and yeah, looking forward to the next round and on. So
all right, Chris, well, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming to hang out with us here up in the booth. And now we're going to talk to our runner-up finisher tonight, Mr. Brian Labarge. And Brian, your car was really pretty good tonight, having a little bit of an incident early in the race. You recover from that, come home second. Man, just not a bad night, especially a good points night.
Yeah, I will absolutely take that. Feels good to be back up here talking to you guys. Haven't had a chance to do that yet this season. So, yeah, made a minor mistake or two in the first half of the race, and as a result, I ended up losing the draft with the lead pack. And quite honestly, I think it was a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because I ended up being separated from that. I pitted a lap early, so I was on the other half of the track when the caution came out. And I think if I had been where I was racing, like where I qualified right about there, I would have been right with that pack, and I would have been right there with everybody else, and I would have been caught up in that mess as well. So sometimes you just got to take that little bit of luck and be happy with it. So, well, but other than that, yeah.
And then at that point, you get a little bit deeper in the race. You went off of a very different strategy than what we saw out of Chris Hill, stopping 7 laps later than he did. Was there any consideration to covering his undercut, or was it more of just, I know the mark I'm going to hit and I'm going to run my race?
I was worried that I was going to come out in basically free air, and I couldn't tell if part of the reason why Chris pitted was because he knew that he was going to come back into the back markers and and just maintain a draft so that he can kind of add up to that pace of getting that draft lap. So if he was, say, for example, 3 seconds ahead, that he gets that a couple cheap draft laps, and now he comes out of it 5 seconds ahead. I wasn't going to be assured that if I did that I would just come out and empty in the same free air that I'd be in and lose even more time. So I decided to kind of pit whenever Jason Miller did, just so I have the chance to at least be somewhere near somebody to kind of keep that pace, because I think Chris was just a couple tenths faster in clean air than I was. So that was really all the strategy thought that I had.
Well, it was definitely an impressive performance here tonight. Congratulations on it. Qualifying in the top 5, finishing up on the podium. Great night for you. Before we let you go, do all those sponsor plugs and shout outs for us here too, brother.
All right. First off, welcome back, NRN, back to the airwaves. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Bizzle, for everything that you guys do to get these races out onto the World Wide Web. Sponsors for NASA and JPL, and also Team Watson Racing Setups. They have some excellent racing setups for a lot of your car needs, so I would highly recommend you go check them out. And thanks to viewers and fellow racers out there.
Well, thank you much, sir. We appreciate you coming to check in with us. Congratulations again on the podium finish there, Mr. LaBarge. And now it's time for us to talk to our third place finisher tonight, Mr. Stephen C. Thompson. Stephen, you ran kind of an interesting race. You gained, I'm just checking the math here, 11 spots from where you started. Obviously, attrition playing a little bit of a role in that. But all in all, not a bad night. Were you just kind of running your pace in your race?
Yeah, I think it's also a little bit of a shakeup, is we don't really have a perfect setup for this. Everyone's kind of going back and forth on how much downforce to do. I felt really loose and didn't feel comfortable through the slow speed stuff, so I slapped a little bit more downforce on it. Found out that was a boat pretty quick. Luckily, that caution bailed out me, because I literally pit with 1 to go under green and then came out with under yellow, and it just put me back to the front, top 5. Able to kind of leech off of the back of the top 4 and just run away from the rest of the group. Definitely attrition, though. I put downforce on because I can't tell you how many guys I saw spin it out in turn 1, and that could be a fatal error if you get it to the inside wall. So I felt lucky. A little exhausted, but it was good.
Well, it was a very nice drive for you tonight. Qualified 14th, finishes up on the podium. Big one for you, and a short little 5-lap stint there at the end. Great battle with Murray. Talk us through that a little bit, because you guys really fought tooth and nail over those last couple of laps.
Yeah, and the same thing kind of goes when you're in a pack. You have a lot more options, but when you're just kind of going head to head, you really have to work off of each other. Even when we were having Brian in the front of that pack a little bit, we were kind of yo-yoing back and forth. He might not have had the downforce I did, because I was able to pull away through the carousel. Definitely maximize turns. I don't even know what they are, 9 and 10. They're not the correct numbered terms anymore, but when we were going through that, I could pull away a little bit, and then he would just rocket ship down the straight. So I had to get a little bit clear. I was worried. I think it went from like 1/10 to like half a second on that final lap, just because of the toe up the S's. So definitely different strategies there, but shows that 2 cars can still battle.
Yeah, a fun show. Thank you very much. We appreciate you putting it on for us tonight here, Stephen. And before we let you go, do any of the sponsor plugs or shout-outs you might want to get in here?
Just thanks to you guys. I know you put a lot of effort into this, and we are running around the clock, it feels like sometimes. But always good to have TNT on NRN. But shout out to my family. I've got my wife and baby sleeping, and the dog's sleeping too. So late night for us here. So even if you're on the East Coast, we're still up.
Yeah.
You sound like you're trying to keep quiet, keep awakening everyone in the house.
Yeah, really. No popping champagne bottles all over the room. But Stephen, congratulations once again on the 3rd place finish. And I'll tell you what, Bizzle, this was definitely not the race I thought we were going to see. It was until that lap 19 incident. We get word from M. McCullen in race control, no further action on either the lap 19 or lap 26 incidents. But this race really played out. We got the winner that we might have expected, but I don't know that the podium was what we were thinking of going into this one.
No, not at all. And Steven brings up a great point in his interview that might get us a couple comments here on the YouTube side. So I want to know everyone's thoughts on this one. With turn numbering and how it's done here in America and all over the rest of the world, is is a turn on a racetrack where you turn the steering wheel, or is it where the track officials have decided to set up a marshal post?
That is determined by the marshal posts.
So a turn on the racetrack doesn't require you to turn the steering wheel. It just depends on if the marshals are set up or not.
Correct. The marshals are set up basically kind of to monitor the corners, and then you'll see them down the long straightaways. But you'll see on like a really long straight, you'll see it'll be like marshal post 7, 7A, 7B. That's because it's still tied to the corner that it was prior to.
Gotcha. But see, when I went and drove at Nelson's Ledges, there were no marshals there. It was just in the flag stand. So I went drag racing at Nelson's Ledges then.
No, because they still have the marshal post. It's not the marshals. You don't go from turn 1 to turn 5 because you had 4 marshals working at turn 1. It's the post. Wait,
Okay.
Bizzle, we will educate you. We will turn you less heathen at some point here. But I think we'll do that off air. We'll discuss marshal posts and driving Zambonis here in just a minute. But we're not going to make the viewers listen to that. So we're going to get the heck on out of here. For Bizzle and everybody else here at the National Racing Network that helps us get these shows on the air, my name is Chris Graham. Thank you so much for coming to hang out with us. We'll talk to you all later, maybe. See you, everybody.